Hi everyone, I'm Ruth Susi,
Hey, I'm Justin Carbone.
and we're here today to tell you all about NRL22.
So, if you want to compete in NRL22, what kind of gear are you going to need? Well, you're going to need a rifle, you're going to need a scope, and a bipod, and then a few other things that we'll get into shortly. So, about the rifle, you're going to want an accurate rifle. I mean, that's pretty much the name of the game. If you can keep them inside of an inch at 50 yards or a half inch would be even better, you'll be fine out there. We're shooting steel targets, so it's either a hit or a miss. That's a lot of times they're pretty generous, so if you can just get into position and execute a good shot, you'll be in good shape. We have a couple of rifles here that we can show you. So this one here is a Savage Mark II. It's a bolt action rifle. It has a Boyd stock. We put a cheek pad on here just to get your cheek up a little higher to the scope. But yeah, bolt action rifles are generally going to be a little bit better for this just because they're in general a little bit more accurate and they're a little bit more reliable, and you can kind of like feel, if you have a round in the chamber or not. So that's what both of these are, both bolt action rifles. So this one here, like I said, is the Mark II. This one has a Vortex Viper PST Gen 2 on it. So you're also going to want a first focal plane scope. What that means is that the reticle in there with all the hash marks is going to stay calibrated with your target no matter what magnification you turn your scope to.
Yeah, and we shoot multiple targets at multiple different distances, sometimes in the same stage. So having those reference points in the reticle also becomes very important.
So yeah, you're going to want those things. You're going to want a good bipod. We do a lot of prone shooting. And then lastly, you see here there's a bubble level. That's really important for making sure that you're holding the rifle straight when you're taking long shots. So the other rifle we have is a Savage B22 Precision. So this is a cool gun. It's got an MDT chassis. The magazine is also a rotary magazine. So the cool thing about that is it fits up in there nice and flush. And now you have a nice flat surface to put your gun on different bags, which we'll get to in a little bit here. This gun has a Vortex Strike Eagle 5-25, which is another cool scope. It's got similar feature set to this one. First focal plane again, it has a really good reticle, and it has a lot of elevation for dialing in long shots.
Yep. And this one has two bubble levels because there's another, we'll talk about levels in a little bit and why that's important. But the reason why we have two is because we shoot a lot of support side, we call it. So there'll be certain shots that you'll have to take from your opposite strength hand and shoulder and eye. So you have to get used to shooting both directions.
Yep, there's a few other features that this rifle has. So they have an ARCA plate on the bottom here. This is from Area 419. The ARCA plate's really nice because you can slide your bipod around to different positions or quickly take your bipod off. There's also an ARCA plate. I don't know, did I call this an ARCA plate? It's an ARCA rail. This is an ARCA plate. This just gives you a much bigger foundation for shooting off of bags. The bipods are from B&T. These are the Atlas Cal bipods. They're really nice. You can go to 45, stow them. You can go 45 back if you want. And then you've got the leg adjustments right there.
So the bipod adjustments really help when you're in different prone situations. So you'll be shooting on your stomach and you're shooting downrange. There's different ranges we've shot at where you might be up on a hill shooting down, and it's nice to be able to adjust that bipod for different height situations. Or you might be the opposite. You might be shooting up onto a hill. So it's really helpful to have a bipod that has stability, but also adjustability.
Exactly. Another thing we should mention here is the scope base. It's really nice to have a base that has at least 20 MOA of cant in it with rimfire, because there's a slow bullet with a low BC. There's just a lot of drop in the trajectory. So if you can cant your scope, 30 MOA would be even better. You can utilize more of that adjustment range within your scope.
Yep, so that just means you can shoot farther distances.
Yeah, both of these rifles have threaded muzzles. We don't use suppressors. Suppressors are cool, they're really quiet, but the ammo that we're using tends to be subsonic match ammo anyway, so these aren't loud. And a suppressor just tends to add another source of variation, so we're seeing people using them less and less.
one of the really important things when you're setting up your rifle is getting the right length of pull. And I didn't realize, Justin and I shared a rifle when I first started shooting, and obviously you can tell there's a height difference. There's also an arm length difference between us. So you want to make sure that you're setting up your rifle right for you. This stock here has spacers in them over here. So you can see, you can take these out or you can add them in, and that's just going to give you some adjustability with the stock. So if I was setting up this rifle for the first time, I'm going to set my hand and my grip correctly first so that I can get a nice 90-degree trigger pull. And then I'm going to measure where this butt plate is in relation to the inside of my elbow here. So this you can see, or maybe you can't see because it's behind, but my arm bend is about right here. So if I removed these spacers, this would be just about the right length for me.
Yeah, if your length of pull is too long, that can be a big issue. If it's too short, you can usually work with it, but if it's too long, you can't get into the rifle and it's going to hold you back.
Yeah, so you want to make sure that you get a nice 90-degree trigger pull so that you're more consistent when you're pulling the trigger.
Yep, so on this one, this is a Savage Mark II. If I were to put my hand on the grip so that I had a 90-degree trigger pull and then brought the gun into my bicep, it's about just right for me. I don't know if you can see, but there's about a ½ inch gap there. That would be perfect for me.
So it's definitely something that you want to try to get situated, right at the beginning so you can start developing really good habits. If you're not set up properly, then you can't get in there properly and you don't have good habits, which is, really important in this game, fundamentals of shooting.
So yeah, as Ruth was alluding to, when you get your gun, the first thing you do is set up that length of pull. Now what's the next thing, Ruth?
The next thing you're going to want to do is put your scope in the appropriate location. There's something called eye relief. So that's the distance between your face and this portion of the scope. So you're going to want to make sure that your scope is set in a way that you can see clearly through the scope when you're on the rifle. You also want to have the appropriate cheek rest height. So this stock has an adjustable cheek rest where you just spin and you can adjust higher or lower. So that's one component. The other component is how close or far away the scope is from your eye. So you can move both on the rail here, the scope rail, you can move the rings, and you can also loosen the rings and you can move the scope within those. So you're going to want to fine tune that to make sure that you can see clearly with the largest field of view. If you're getting black around the edges, there's shadow in there, that's not good. So you want to move it forward or backwards until it's nice and clear with the appropriate length of pull.
So yeah, when you have those two things set up for you, or those three things, including the cheek height, you should be able to naturally lay behind the gun. You can lay there all day long. You can close your eyes, take a nap, rest the full weight of your head on the cheek piece. You should be able to open your eyes and you should have a nice image of the target.
Yep. And then once you have that set up with the proper eye relief, there's one other setting on the scope that you'll only have to set one time, which is the diopter.
So yeah, that's back here on the eyepiece. What this is doing is this is adjusting the way that the reticle appears to your eye. Not the target image, but the reticle specifically. So the way you adjust this is you point the gun at either like a white blank wall or up in the sky. You don't want to have an image in there, so we're just focusing on the reticle. And you would turn this in or out until the reticle is perfectly clear for your eye.
One of the best ways to do this, because your eye will try to focus on that and adjust for you. So one of the best ways to do this is by closing your eye and turning it slightly and then opening and determining if that's sharper or blurrier than the previous setting. And then you just repeat that.
So yeah, once you get that set, you should never have to touch it again. Some people will take a paint marker and put a dot on here just so that they know if it's been turned. I've seen people go so far as to put like electrical tape on there just to keep it from turning. But some of them have a locking feature where you can tighten a lock ring against the diopter so it doesn't move. But yeah, you're done with that. After that, once you're shooting and using this gun, then you're using this parallax adjustment to bring the image into focus and to bring the image onto the reticle.
So let's talk a little bit about the gear that you might need for a match or want at a match.
Yeah, so you're going to need a rifle, an accurate rifle. You'll need a bipod on the rifle so that you can lay prone behind the rifle and make accurate shots. You'll need a rear bag in order to lay prone. So we'll get into some of the bags here. And then also the bags will double as a prop bag or a barricade bag, some people say. So you would drape the bag over a prop, and then you would set your rifle on here and balance the rifle there, and you can make some pretty steady shots that way. So in addition to those things, you're going to need some ammo. So we've got some ammo laid out here. These are very common types that are used in the NRL22. Everything from CCI through SK, Lapua, RWS, and Ely. We recommend that you start out with wherever your pocketbook kind of allows you to start and see if your gun likes it. Some guns prefer, CCI, some guns like this stuff, so see what your gun likes to shoot.
Yeah, so to test that out, what you'd want to do is probably buy or borrow from a friend one box of a few different types of ammo, and then go shoot groups at 50 yards and just see which one you're grouping tighter.
Yep, another aspect of the ammunition in your gun would be the velocity standard deviation, or how consistent your gun is shooting that ammo for velocity. When you get into long range shooting and the trajectory starts to drop, the velocity variation becomes vertical group size, so that's another thing to consider there.
Definitely something to look into. When you're shooting the monthly course of fire, you're definitely not going beyond 200 yards, and you're typically inside of 100 yards, so it's not as impactful, but definitely something to keep an eye on.
So about the trajectory, another thing you'll need is either an app on your phone that is a ballistics app, or a lot of people are using a Kestrel weather meter that also has a ballistic solver built in with a rangefinder. So you'll need to know the distance to your target. You plug it into your app. Your app will already have all your inputs for your gun and your ammo that you'll pre-program in there. So yeah, you'll plug in the distance and it'll tell you what you should hold for the drop. And you can either dial that with your scope, or you can hold it in your reticle. And you should also know what the wind is doing. You're going to ballpark that, estimate it based on what you're feeling. Yeah, so a couple other pieces of gear. A lot of people are using a spotting scope similar to this. This happens to be binos. These are Bushnell Forges. These are 15 power binos. These are a little on the high end. 8 power or 10 power work well as well. This is a Vortex tripod. Really nice carbon fiber tripod, lighter weight. It has a lot of adjustability, and it just works well for spotting, and some people use them for shooting as well, which we can talk about in the future here.
Right. So if you don't have a set of binos or a spotter when you first start out, that's pretty typical. So come to a match and people will share gear with you and share equipment so you can keep spotting. But we highly recommend when you're new to the sport that you get on glass and you're looking downrange, because you're going to learn a lot just by watching other people's shots downrange. So even if you don't have your own, just ask if you can borrow someone's. People are more than happy to let you be the spotter for the stage because it frees them up to do other things. So definitely reach out and ask other people to borrow gear and things like that if you don't have it right out of the gate.
Yeah, and some other equipment here. So this gun has an ARCA rail from Area 419, and clamped onto the ARCA rail is a Gray Ops ARCA plate. So this will help give you more stability when you're shooting off props. It's a really good thing to have if you want to get to the higher levels.
Yep. And then for bags, we mentioned before shooting off of barricades. There's different situations where different types of bags can be helpful. These are a few of the more popular bags out there right now. This is a mini fortune cookie by Weebad. The shape allows, if you're on a skinnier type prop, like a post or a pole, it gives you that nice flat surface from a small space. So that's helpful for that. This is the Game Changer, the wax canvas Game Changer from Armageddon Gear. And this is one that is just kind of a really good all-around bag. It's my every situation bag that I use and leverage. It's nice and big, but it gets flat and nice and solid. So I like that one for most things. And then from Short Action Precision, there's the Solo Sack. This one in particular is filled with sand, which makes it nice and heavy, which is fun to carry around when you're walking around at the matches, but it also gets nice and flat. So for smaller spaces, it's kind of nice for that.
Yeah, so in all these examples, these companies are offering these with different materials. Some are more durable materials, and some of them are more, soft and more flexible. So you can choose what color you want, what type of material you want, and then also what it's filled with. So everything from really light materials that are better for matches where you're doing a lot of walking and hiking, all the way to like that bag over there has sand fill. It's a lot more steady once you get it in a position, but it's just really heavy.
Yeah. So that's another thing too, where people are happy to let you, play with, feel, touch their bags so that you're not overwhelmed by all the options out there. It's good to, start with one thing and then, take a look at what other people are using, and you can always expand from there.
Yeah, and then from there, there's bags that people use for rear support. So here's one from Armageddon Gear. They're getting pretty big, but it is a big advantage to have rear support. So people wear them like this. You'll have a bag like this for front support. You'll put it on the prop or barricade, and then they use this to fill in voids in their body and get the back end of the rifle stabilized. So again, similar to the Arca plate, it's kind of extra equipment that we don't necessarily recommend that you start with, but once you get to the higher levels, it's a big advantage to get these little things that give you more stability.
Yeah. I'm a big proponent of starting simple because it's going to help you focus on those fundamentals and get really, really good at those. And if you bring a rear bag in after you have those mastered, there's certain situations where it's really going to help you, but then you're not using it in the wrong ways where it's really going to hinder your ability to do it naturally. And there's a lot of stages that say there's only one bag allowed or no bags allowed. So it's a really good idea to start simple, in my opinion.
Agreed.
So on your first time attending a match, there are a few things that you're going to want to make sure you bring. One of those things is water. So we shoot rain, shine, heat, cold, all kinds of conditions, and having water with you so you can stay hydrated is really important, especially in the warm months. You're also going to want to bring some snacks. Typically at the monthly courses of fire, they're not long enough for the match director to provide food, but it varies from match to match. So you can always talk to your match director to see if that's an option. We always like to bring our own snacks though, just in case. And that way, if your blood sugar starts to fall, you can, remediate that yourself.
Yeah, so you're going to be carrying these things in a backpack or a range bag. So some other things to bring. Bring a little tool pack. A couple of wrenches so you can adjust your scope or your action screws on your gun if you need. What else is there? There's pens and pencils. People use, when you have a stage that has multiple different targets at different distances, you need some sort of cheat sheet. People call it a dope card, which stands for data on previous engagement. It's an old sniper term. But yeah, you'll need a dope card system or, pencil and paper so that you can write those things down.
Yep, and obviously eye and ear protection is always a good idea to have in your range bag at all times.